We've got another huge patch on our hands with 13.4, so let's take a look at everything changing this week and how it affects our League of Legends tier list. So before we start off with the top lane, there's a few system changes like kill experience being nerfed and some more adjustments to the jungle sustain and clear speed. But if you do want to see those changes more in depth, then we recommend checking out the official League of Legends patch notes. Over to that top lane then, and we still have a fair few champions in the S tier. We've got Singed, Shen, Kled, Camille, Darius, Olaf, Akshan, Jax, Gangplank, Rengar and Riven. One thing that is getting nerfed this week is Thorn's Shield though, so have fun playing against Gangplank this patch. Jax's nerfs are finally here after a series of patches since his rework where he's just been so damn strong. Riot are nerfing his ultimates on hit damage and the bonus armor and magic resist too, which should definitely help out when trying to shut him down, especially in the earlier levels. However, don't get too excited though, because they're changing his E so dodging attacks now increases all damage instead of just base damage, which basically means if he wasn't already hard to beat in the early levels, he's actually going to be even more difficult now. Either way, we aren't going to move Jax out of the S tier just yet. He's been so consistently good since that rework, and it's probably going to take a lot more to really hurt him properly. Another round of Cho'Gath Buffs are here again, increasing his armor per level, buffing his Q damage, and reducing the mana cost of his Q and W as well. At some point, it feels like one too many of these Cho'Gath Buffs are going to push him over the edge, and make him feel incredibly strong. But for now, he is going to stay in the B tier. He's one of those champions you don't really see too often, but when he does work, he feels so tanky, he deals some surprising damage too, and those Qs and Ws can really make the difference in teamfights. The Riven Buffs coming this week seem pretty juicy, increasing her split push potential but also allowing her passive to actually damage towers. And her passive scaling is now improved as well. Riven has still been performing really well though at high ranks, and these changes could make those one tricks a little bit too strong. Get ahead in the lane phase, side lane, take towers and take down anyone else that tries to come and stop you. Riven's mobility and outplay potential has always been there, and with Black Cleaver being so good at the moment, if you do get that 2 to 3 item power spike, you become so damn difficult to beat. So if you do have what it takes to play Riven perfectly, now is the best time to do it. If you are looking to find out how to play Riven better, then you're going to need to know how to build her. So don't forget to check out Mobalytics to import all the best builds and runes straight into your climb, so you can get practicing and start climbing quicker. Moving down to the jungle now, and loads of nerfs coming in for this one this week. In the S tier, we have Maokai, Udyr, Elise, Fiddlesticks, Jarvan, Rammus, and Echo. Yes, Udyr, Elise, Maokai, Jarvan, and Amumu have all been nerfed this week. We've moved Amumu down to the A tier, but we've kept the others in the S tier, as we just don't think these nerfs are quite enough to make as much of a difference as you may expect. Now, these champions are likely to take a bit of a hit, but seeing as their win rates are just so damn high and have been for a while now, it is going to take a big nerf to really bring them out of this tier. Viego is finally getting buffed after so many patches where he's just been sat at a pretty disappointing win rate. Viego's passive can now crit, which is actually going to be game changing for his itemization. Infinity Edge Viego coming in hot. His ultimate is also being buffed too, so we can definitely expect him to make a bit of a comeback this week. Viego definitely takes a bit of practice, because not only do you need to know how to actually play Viego, but you need to have a solid understanding of every other champion in the game. We've predicted that Viego will move up to the A tier this week, so check back next week to see if we were right or not. With so many of the big guns being nerfed in the jungle this week, other junglers who are already strong but slightly overshadowed will get even more popular. Echo, Rammus and Wukong are great examples of junglers in a really good spot at the moment. So while everyone else worries about those obvious ones, pick these champions up and you'll find some huge success in patch 13.4. Moving down to the mid lane, and in the god tier we have Annie and Cassiopeia. In the S tier we have Anivia, Akshan, Aurelion Sol and Tristana. Annie is making it through this patch with no nerfs, which is pretty crazy considering just how broken she is and just how many games she's winning in the mid lane. Speaking of broken, Anivia is getting some nerfs, and these are not enough to bring her out of the S tier for now, but it will make her scaling durability a little bit less oppressive. Riot are nerfing her HP and armor per level, so maybe, just maybe, she won't be quite as hard to shut down. Anivia just scales like a monster, and she thrives off her super strong itemization options at the moment. She has amazing wave clear too, she's got damage, durability, and utility that all works really well throughout all stages of any game. So I'm sure if you are an Anivia one trick, you're probably having the time of your life. Veigar Buffs have been overdue, as he's been completely irrelevant so far this season. Riot are buffing his Q and W cast ranges, which is actually really good. We've put Veigar up from C to B with these buffs, and let's see if that extra range is enough to actually make the difference. Veigar will always be useful with that AoE crowd control, but if he doesn't get farmed and scaled up, he can really struggle to deal the damage he needs to. But when he is good and he is scaled and he is farmed, well, that ultimate seriously hurts. Another champion who has been a bit weak for a while is Ahri, and she's another one getting buffed in this patch. We did see those big visual updates recently, but hopefully now it's time to see her performance match the same as well. Ahri's base HP and armor is going up and her ultimate cooldown is getting reduced. The ultimate buff is pretty significant though, as she's so reliant on this to navigate fights, but also it contributes massively to her damage output as well. We're going to keep Ahri in the B tier for this week, but we may consider moving her up next week just depending on how much difference these buffs make. Azir's changes this week are pretty significant. Riot are aiming at removing the ability to play Azir support altogether, but also impacting his early laning and making him more burst orientated in the later stages of the game, with his E and his ultimate. Azir is not actually on screen in this mid lane tier list and currently he's sat in the C tier. He's by no means an easy champion to pull off and to play well, and it's only really those high elo 1 tricks or in the 5v5 pro scene where he's really impactful. So for now this week we aren't going to change his placements. Orianna is another mid laner getting another buff this week, and it feels like we've had a lot of buffs for her recently. However, this hasn't really resulted in a better overall performance for the majority of players. Every time we see those Orianna buffs, we expect her to make a comeback, but it just never really seems to happen. This time, Riot are buffing her base armor and reducing the mana cost of a W, so let's keep an open mind and see if these changes make enough difference. Now it's time to take a look at those AD carries, and in the S tier we have Xayah, Twitch, Jhin, Karthus, Kai'Sa, Draven and Samira. Not too much is changing here again this week, as most of the adjustments this week are aimed in other roles. One champion that is getting nerfed though is Samira, and it's kind of expected because she's been absolutely popping off recently, especially so since those big item adjustments a few patches ago. Samira's movement speed is going down per stack on her passive, and her ultimate lifesteal effectiveness is also being nerfed as well. With tanky supports doing wonders again in solo queue, we aren't going to take her out of the S tier, just because she works so perfectly with those aggressive supports, and she's still going to be winning a ton of games with them. These changes will hurt her a little bit, but not enough for now. Aphelios is getting a little bit of love this patch by buffing his passive attack speed slightly. Unfortunately though, this just isn't going to be enough to make Aphelios viable in the majority of ranks. He's had a pretty disastrous win rate for such a long time now, and one of the main reasons for this is he's yet another champion that is super difficult to find the balance between the average player base and how good he can be in pro play. It might take a bit more of a rework rather than a buff or a nerf to truly balance this champion in the long run. But for now, you few players that do enjoy playing him should feel a little bit better off this week. Xayah is borderline overpowered at the moment, and honestly her stats are so impressive it's up for debate as to whether she's the best AD carry in the entire game. Xayah has good poke damage, fantastic trading and all-in potential, and once she's got that level 6, she's now so difficult to shut down as well. She works well with a huge variety of support picks and doesn't really have too many difficult matchups either. If you know how to really maximize your damage from those feathers, it's crazy how often you can outplay those enemies in 2v2s, even against all the odds. And if you do manage to find yourself a duo partner who loves playing Rakan, this bot lane combination is really at its best. Speaking of Rakan, let's finally jump into that support tier list then. And from just a few weeks ago, this S tier looks completely different. We've got Rakan, Blitzcrank, Nautilus, Pyke, Rell and Thresh. And of course Annie in the God tier. Buffs to Relic Shield and Steel Shoulder Guards and nerfs to Spell Thief's Edge and Spectral Sickle are basically going to make those tanky supports even stronger than they already have become recently. So if you are a fan of that aggressive, engaging playstyle, then this is going to be the patch for you. And there's not many more fun champions than Thresh, who's receiving huge changes this week. Thresh is one of those champions that's always been so much fun, and he goes through phases of being pretty good or a little bit irrelevant. This week though, Thresh is getting some big changes that all seem to be pretty much buffs overall. Riot are adjusting his ability max order, and now the damage on his Q and E are going up, the cooldown on that Q is also reduced, and it's only really his lantern that's getting nerfed. The shield is now smaller and the cooldown is longer, but aside from that, it's a big positive patch for Thresh. We're actually going to move Thresh up to the S tier alongside his favourite hooking pals like Pyke, Nautilus and Blitzcrank. And with these changes, the nerfs to other support items and the buffs to his ones, we think it's a great time to play Thresh again. Well, I don't know who it is, but someone at Riot Games wants to main AP Alistar, as he's receiving yet another round of buffs to his ratios. We've already seen this champion popping off in the mid lane, in the top lane, and it's pretty crazy the damage and crowd control this guy can offer when he gets those horns rolling. However, in terms of support, these constant AP buffs aren't really making as much of a difference. Alistar is a difficult support champion to play consistently in the bot lane, but he is fantastic if you do know what you're doing. His constant roams around the map are insane, and there's not much the enemy mid laner can do when you flash over the Raptor's wall and headbutt them back into your teammates. So if you are good enough to play Alistar and pull him off, he's a great choice to carry with. Senna has been struggling for ages now, and she's honestly been having a really underwhelming season so far. It's going to take some absolutely huge changes to bring Senna back from the depths, but this week Riot are buffing her attack speed ratio slightly, and her ultimate damage and cooldown are being buffed too. Senna just has a lot of difficult matchups though, and with tanky engager supports absolutely slapping right now, it's going to be hard to get through that lane phase without being farmed. Although if you can make it through the lane phase, she still does scale really well and provides a ton of long range damage and utility as games progress. For now, she's just going to stay in the B tier. And that's going to bring us to the end of our patch 13.4 rundown and how all the changes affect our champions in the tier list. Don't forget to check out our low elo and high elo tier lists over on our website, and check out our picks of the patch alongside all the items and runes to play along with them. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video. Take care.